Hi there folks, it's Joe, aka the Beardy Wine Guy here, making wine a little bit less scary. It's catching on, eventually everyone will be saying it. So here we are on the Bottles Wine Bar Merchant YouTube channel. Welcome to the second in our series of online wine tastings, so that you lovely lot can join in while we are stuck at home. We're back in my lovely spare room. We have our first video that we did on White Rioja, namely the Great Viura, so you can check that out. I've put a link in the description down below. So, how did you get hold of the wine in the first place? Well, you lucky ducks, Bottles is running a delivery service that is safe, contactless, and really convenient during isolation. Take a look in the description down below and it's got all of the details. So today we're heading to Italy. I know, lovely, warm, Mediterranean climates. Italy offers a great wealth of variety and quality with over 350 regional wines and over 500 native Italian wine grape varietals. So things can be a little bit overwhelming. You're not quite sure where to start if you want to get into Italian wines. Now, obviously we know a few of the whites, so biggest one would be Pinot Grigio, then you have Gavi, Grillo, Vermentino, Asti, Trebbiano, Soave, Frascati, Orvieto. All of these are Italian whites, but that's just a very, very small subsection. In terms of reds, probably the two biggest are Sangiovese and Nebbiolo, but also there's Barbera, Corvina, Montepulciano, the Super Tuscans, Negro Amaro, and so on and so forth. So in this online wine tasting, I wanted to highlight a lesser known grape varietal, one that is superb value, one that's bold and strong with good alcoholic content, and is very, very good for pairing with different foods. So, ladies and gentlemen, I give you Primitivo. So, Primitivo. Before we talk about the grape itself, I feel it's important to know a little bit about its origins and its history, due to the fact that there's been a long-running debate about certain aspects of it. What we know for sure is that Primitivo, the grape, its modern-day home is in Puglia, which is in southern Italy. If you look at it on the map, it's going to be in the heel part. You know, it looks like a boot. It's in the heel part of Italy. However, it didn't originate in Puglia. It's made its way across from the coastal vineyards of Croatia, where it is still grown today under the names Tribidrag and Kielnik Kastelanski. An ancient grape variety that was almost going extinct until a very short time ago. So after being successful in Puglia, Southern Italians moved to the USA, California to be exact, in the 19th century. They took their native grape with them, and eventually they called it Zinfandel. It's a bit of a mystery where the name Zinfandel comes from. So that's right, the famous red grape that makes sweet and red dry wines, and also your white Zinfandel rosés, is actually Primitivo. And it proves extremely successful in the USA. It earned a reputation as the national grape of the US. Now, until 2002, both Americans and Italians and even Croatians believed that their grape was singular and it was unique. But they did some DNA testing on them from the University of California, and there have been disagreements going on for years and years, so they thought, let's strike a line under this. And they found that it is the same grape. So Primitivo and Zinfandel and the Tribodrag or Kiana Castellanski, I'm getting better at the pronunciations, were the same. This left quite a few Americans and Italians with their arse in their hands, quite literally. It was quite difficult for them to get over that fact. So we know about its origins, but what about the grape and where it's grown predominantly? Because we're going to be focusing in on the Italian Primitivo, the Puglia, rather than the Zinfandel element. We can cover that in a later date. So Primitivo is a small, thin-skinned red grape that loves sunny, dry climates, hence why it really likes Italy and California. Now, the dry heat of Puglia is also used to produce half of Italy's olive oil. So you can kind of get an idea of what the climate's going to be like. It's got obviously a really hot climate and fertile soil, and it's surrounded on three sides by the Mediterranean Sea. So you've got cooling winds coming off, just keeping the vine temperatures a little bit lower. Otherwise the grape's going to dry out, they're going to go raisiny. You know, this can be preferable in some styles of Primitivo. The name Primitivo translates as early one, which you'd think it wouldn't. Primitivo almost speaks to primitive, so you'd think it would be kind of basic and rustic. Although, to be fair, the wine is very robust and a lot of people don't think it's very complex, so it kind of fits the primitive thing, but it means early one, and that means that they ripened early, the grapes. It also links in with Tempranillo, which is used to make Rioja, as that also means early one, same in Spanish. In the local Pulian dialect, it's called Mirtest, which means hard wine, which is more suitable because it is quite a hard, strong wine. Now, the grape itself has a couple of potential problems when they're growing it. The first is it's a very, very high yielding grape. You get a lot of grapes on the vine. Similar to the Viura that we talked about last week, you get lots and lots of grapes on the vine. So you've got to be careful that it doesn't make the wine dilute. And because of the amount of grapes on the actual vine, you are getting some uneven ripening. So not all of them ripen at the same time, which means you're going to get some green grapes left in there. They have to try and leave the bunches on the vine as long as they possibly can to get those green grapes to ripen and their skins to darken. This means that most Primitivos are going to have high sugars in the berries, so there's going to be lots of high sugar, and in turn this can lead to very high alcohol contents. You know, 13.5 to 15%. You know, we're looking at the higher end in terms of alcohol. Now, the grapes are very thin-skinned, which is not usually what you'd expect from a hot climate wine. You'd want them to avoid water loss as much as possible. It means it's got less skin to wine juice ratio, which means that all of those flavours coming from the wine are going to be concentrates, but you don't get as much tannin. Tannin needs slightly more juice to be able to be absorbed into the wine. So Primitivo, even though it's a big bolshy alcoholic wine, doesn't have a particularly high tannin content. So finally, Primitivo's had a tough few decades in Italy. In the 90s, beginning in the 90s, the EU introduced a scheme called the Pull Vine Scheme, which really affected the amount of grapes that were grown. Thousands of acres were pulled up of Primitivo. And before we go any further, this isn't a place for political discussions about the EU and what they got up to, so make your own minds up, don't be sheep. The scheme offered winemakers a financial incentive, a subsidy, to pull up their grapevines, and this was for a particular reason. It was to fight something called the wine lake glut. Sounds delightful, but essentially what it was that the wine, especially in Europe, had an overproduction. We were in excess of wine that we couldn't possibly sell. 1.7 billion bottles, more than could be sold. So that's due to overproduction and a decline in sales. It was used in other countries as well, New Zealand and Australia, and most recently in Bordeaux. You decide if you agree with it or not, but it did affect the production of Primitivo for a while. So that was a lengthy section, but it's really cool to know a little bit more about the history of the wine and the origins. Remember, there's tons of info out there and lots of things you can research. I'm just giving you a brief overview, a brief framework. Go out and explore it for sure. Let's get tasting. So I have here a bottle of Terra Avare Primitivo from Puglia. It's still fairly young, 2017. Fairly youthful, just to prove I do taste the wines. There's a glass that I've left to breathe for about half an hour. It's always a good idea to do this with red wines, you know, get some oxygen in there, allow them to breathe. Obviously, if you can't wait, then crack on, but say if you're having red wine with dinner, it's always a good idea to open the bottle and pour it out either into glasses straight away or into a decanter or even a water jug or something like that, just so enough oxygen can get into the wine and it will boost it. I mean, it's 9:30 in the morning, so why not?
Mr. Booze, Mr. Booze, Mr. Booze, Mr. B-double-O-Z. That sure spells booze.
Now, a few things I know about it before I taste it. It's going to be slightly fuller bodied, a good amount of weight. Some people, because of the name and because of where it's from, they think it's a bit rustic, it's a bit low in character. I think it's a little unfair, but let's have a look at this one now. Colour-wise, pretty dark red. It's got some violet-y tinges, so some purple tinges. Good legs on it. So legs are the trails that are left if you give your wine a little bit of a swish around, and you can see your trails. This is generally concerned with the alcohol content, not quality. So good strong legs, which match because it's about 13.5%. Now on the nose, okay, right, so I can tell that the wine has seen some time in oak. I'm not sure how long, but there's definite vanilla-y, maybe toffee, almost a tobacco-y kind of vibe to it. Again, don't think about it as tobacco, but that kind of aromatic smell of tobacco that you get. It's you can see it's had oak. There's also some plums in there, some darker fruit perhaps. It's not massive on the nose, but you can definitely tell it's been oaked. So let's have a try, shall we? Yeah. So Primitivo is for a dry red. It's slightly sweeter on the palate. I know this wine is pretty dry, but it has a massive amount of ripe fruit, and it kind of tricks your taste buds to think that it's sweeter. It's a sweeter red. So this is actually a really good pick for people who don't like dry, strong tannin wines. It's got some decent weight, probably medium weight, and you're looking at all the fruits in here. So you've got blackcurrant, you've got blackberry, you've got cherry, you've got good acidity. Some good acidity going on there. Light tannin, so not too drying in the mouth. There's that booze hit. You feel it, it's warming down here. You get that lovely booze hit. Almost a chocolatey finish as well. Cheers, I'm gonna have one more before I talk about it. Really lovely. A big and burly, robust wine. Like, you can see why this is made in South Italy. It has that sun element to it. You can tell it's seen some sun, but also the oak mellows it a little bit as well. So what would I have to eat with this? Now, as is a really good rule of thumb, if you're not sure about what food to pair with, go with where it's made. So they pair well with a variety of foods. Obviously, southern Italian food. So if you look at Puglia, the raw elements are the fact that it's a bright, easy drinking red. So vegetables, fresh vegetables, tomato, olive oil, eggplant, peppers, so pasta dishes, stews, lamb. They use a lot of lamb there. It would go nicely with lamb. With its acidity, it can actually be used to pair with a few interesting little ones that you might not have thought of. So I might match this with a good burger, as long as there was some tomato in there, or tomato ketchup. If there's a tomato element in the burger, I would match it with that, because I think the acidity would help to brighten those flavours. And this is the curveball, if you think. Baked beans. Now, bear with me, you wouldn't open a bottle of wine for baked beans, but say if you're camping in your back garden at the moment with your loved one, or even by yourself, or with your kids, and you need a drink, the acidity will brighten the flavours. So there's good strong alcohol in there, so it'll warm you up because the evenings are a bit cooler. And you know, it doesn't just have to be a tin of baked beans. You can do wonderful kind of beans and baked egg and chorizo. Work nicely with spicy sausage, which a lot of wines with high tannin wouldn't work with spicy things. Because tannin kind of raises the spice even more, whereas low to medium work really nicely with spicy dishes. So those are just some examples. There are plenty more, you know, eggplant parmesan, and it works nicely with Italian cheeses and things like that. Okay there folks, thanks for joining me in the second online wine tasting video looking at Primitivo, aka Zinfandel, or the two Croatian names that I really don't want to pronounce again. In a nutshell, an easy drinking red, not as rich or as jammy as Zinfandel, but soft in tannin with strong alcohol, strong bold fruit flavours. And remember, you can get this wine and many others from Bottles Wine Bar and Merchants. Have a look in the description, and we can get wines like this and many others delivered directly to you. Remember to scope out the bar's social media pages. So you've got Facebook, Bottles Wine Bar and Merchants. Twitter at Bottles Wine, and Instagram at Bottles Wine Bar. There's lots of news on there, special offers, music events that are coming up, you know, even while we're in isolation and after we're out, we'll be putting all of our events up. Leave us a picture if you make a purchase, and you can get 10% off of your next purchase in the bar, and tell us how much you're enjoying your purchases. This is what we love to hear. Now, you can also check out a podcast that I run called the Beardy Wine Guide Podcast. It's on all of the major platforms. We're on to episode 3, and make sure that you check out the other 2 episodes as well, 1 and 2. We just talk about certain grape varieties and some wine myths that may be out there, and we try to delve into those a little bit deeper and figure out whether they're true or not, basically. Remember to like, subscribe and comment on the YouTube channel and on the individual videos. It helps out and it makes me know that you guys appreciate and like what I'm doing. Most of all, have a great day and stay safe. Ciao for now.